Hi, you're listening to Thoughtful Wellness Revolution, where we believe wellness isn't wellness if it's just for you. We're your hosts, Zahra and Hien. And before we get started, please make sure to give us a 5-star rating and review. Even though we're a podcast that believes in decolonizing, we're still bound to the algorithm. So every little bit that you can help us out, we really appreciate it. And we thank you for all the support. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome to the beginning of season 3. This is episode 0, where Hien and I generally like to give you a little insight as to what's going on with us, what's going on in our lives, what we kind of think of the upcoming season. And I do also believe we're going to talk a bit about where we thought we would be in the podcast and where we are as we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary, right? So exciting. If you've been here with us, if you're just joining us, thanks for coming. And Hien, what's on your mind today?
Well, what's on my mind is actually it is our 1-year anniversary, basically, because our first episode came out last year on the 22nd officially, but I remember we had our launch party on the 21st. And so if you're listening today, this episode is coming out on the 21st. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary to Zahra and to our listeners.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Wow. To really think about where we would have come in a year. Hien, do you have any thoughts on that you want to share with everyone, or do you want to catch people up on life, or where do you want to start?
Well, first thing I'm just thinking on my mind is just how it feels longer than a year.
Oh my gosh,
that was a really fucking long year, Zahra. And because I'm thinking okay, so it's 1 year and we're on this is our 3rd season that's starting, and I'm kind of amazed at how much we've done, because I feel like sometimes when you're just living your daily life, and we're always planning ahead with things we want to do with episodes and other plans we have, it's kind of you don't feel like you've done a lot. I feel that often it's oh, I don't really know that I've done much, but I'm really thinking now about each episode, each interview, each bonus episode. So that's a reminder to folks listening, is when you listen to an interview, there's also a bonus interview. If you subscribe to our Substack, I'm plugging us, you can get access to that. And so I'm just thinking about that, and then how we have the bonus episodes. And yeah, I'm just kind of amazed. So I just want to say kudos to us, because I want to celebrate us and really just give us I think, as Chi-Chi says last season, that 11 seconds. So let it sink in. So yeah, we're awesome.
yeah. We're pretty great. No, I agree with you. It is in the day-to-day where you're just oh my gosh, we're not getting anywhere. But you look back and you're wow, oh my gosh, we have done a lot of work, which is really beautiful, because it has been, for everyone and for each of us individually and in different ways, a weird and hard year.
Yeah, it definitely has been. And it's not getting any less weird or less hard. I don't want to be such a bore about it, but it's and it's not necessarily getting, there's the both and it's not getting less weird and less hard. But at the same time, we have done amazing things, and we are continuing, and we're just really excited for season 3. And, I think you actually asked me, I'm not answering the question, right? But I think you're asking me anything I want to catch people up about me. And I would just say within the last year, or just this summer even, it has just been really busy. And I've been really exhausted. And I will say that one of the things that keeps me it inspires me, I guess, keeps me somewhat I don't know, sane, so that I don't lose it all, is being able to do this with you, Zahra. Truly.
I appreciate that sentiment, and I feel the same way. It is having this space to come back to where we get to fully embrace all of the more, I hate when we use this word, but radical, I guess, parts of ourselves. It makes me feel like, yes, this is you still get to be yourself, especially when it feels like from all angles sometimes life is just really trying to crush us all under capitalism.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Is there anything else you want to share about how you've been this summer? Any updates?
How have I been this summer? Some people may know I have been having some health problems for the since before we started doing this podcast. So it's been really great that I've been having more strides than setbacks recently. And I am feeling like a person again, living a life, as opposed to just watching a bunch of other people live lives and having this podcast, which fills me up, which still fills me up, because that is something that has really kept me going. It's just this space to ignite our fiery Sag and Leo energy. But yeah, feeling like I have fire in the rest of my life again. And yeah, I would like to say too that I'm grateful for this podcast and for you, Hien, and this journey that we are on together.
Yeah. And so with this season, it is a little bit different, or we're switching things up. Do you want to share a little bit?
Yes. Okay. So normally when we are recording these episode zeros for you all of the interviews have already taken place because that's how we like to do it. And this season, we actually started recording guests before the season even ended, before season 2 even ended. And we actually haven't finished recording guests for various reasons. And we're excited to kind of try that out and see what it's like, and have a kind of mix of pre-recorded, so to speak, interviews and ones that will be maybe addressing more current issues, which I think is something we haven't really had before. So I think that's cool and interesting. How do you view the change in because I know last season we had the change where we added post interviews. So like, yeah, this is our newest change. How are you feeling about it?
I feel pretty good about it. And it's something that I think will be interesting, because when I think back about the previous seasons, and especially with the post interview, I think about like we were releasing episodes that we had recorded like 3 months prior. And of course, a lot of the things that we talk about will still be relevant. Like I edited one of the episodes we have already recorded last week, and it was still relevant, right? Because there's just so much there's so much like it's like we're in a particular era, right? Like the COVID/pandemic/ late stage capitalism / fascism era. And so there's a lot of relevance, but I am really excited about having some episodes, especially like when you think about as we come towards the end of the season. Sometimes I kind of feel like, oh, I wish that we were able to share things that were more like, this is what happened like maybe only a month ago or a few weeks ago, versus like way beforehand. And so I'm really excited. And speaking of, talking about relevant topics, I wonder if you want to share a little bit about or remind folks about the pop culture bonus episodes we've been doing.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so as of, I guess, a month or two ago, we started over on the Substack offering bonus episodes where we dive into pop culture topics and we talk about them a little bit from wellness perspectives. We talk about them through leftism perspectives. And really just looking at things also through the Enneagram and astrology, which I think has been really fun as well, where we kind of just dive into different topics. I think we've done the social contract and like where celebrities fit into that, and like the kind of rat race that we're all in to try to get out of the social contract, which I think was a cool episode. And then we did another episode about Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, because there is a lot of fascinating stuff to touch on there, including their most recent imitation plantation wedding, which did not need to happen. And we talk a bit about Ben's shady past
and
in regards
J-Lo's
to
shady past.
Yeah, the shady past of those two. Also, I think it's if your best friend and your brother, like her best friend and her brother didn't come to the wedding, it's like how happy is everyone about this? But yeah, so we're talking about pop culture. We're giving different takes. Hien, how are you feeling about our pop culture episodes?
I am very excited about it. And the thing about recording episodes with Zahra and I is sometimes we not sometimes, I'd say always, we have like some kind of outline, and sometimes we go by the outline a bit better than other times. And I'm saying that because this episode is not going by the outline, but that's okay, because part of the pop culture episodes is something that we also want to talk about today, about sort of like our reflections on where we thought we were going. Like it's kind of like, where we were when we started versus kind of where we're at now, or where we're thinking we're headed. And the pop culture piece is like a really fun thing that I'm so glad that we added, because I think about like, when we think about like pop culture news, or I don't know, podcast or whatever, I feel like the thing that comes to mind is it's very, very like neoliberal girl boss talk, right? Like it's very just, your mainstream news personalities, I guess, and type of takes. Like it's very mainstream. And then you get wild cards like Wendy Williams, who is not doing her show anymore, but who's just really like chaotic and like really vile sometimes. So I feel like what Zahra and I are doing is hopefully in some ways unique and interesting. And I just feel really good about it. And Zahra, do you want to share more about like kind of where we started and kind of where we're heading with that?
Yeah, I think that is a really interesting piece to restart that. Yeah, I do. I think it's really interesting that when we started the podcast, I don't know how deeply you resonate as teaching yoga. I think you still resonate pretty strongly with yoga and meditation teacher. And I'm not saying that I don't now. It's just I've been on such a journey for the last year and a half that it is really interesting. And there's a lot happening in the yoga world and amongst South Asian yoga instructors and other things that are just happening that I don't know. I guess it's just been a nice reevaluation of where I fit into that and what that looks like. And so it's really allowed me to look at wellness beyond just the lens of being in the yoga space. I don't know if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's also nice to see the intersections that we've created between wellness and community care and cultures of care and undoing capitalism and other colonial and white supremacist structures, and like how those are integral to any of us actually ever being well, because these are the things that are destroying our planet and our people. Yeah, what do you think? I'm curious what you have to say.
Yeah, I feel like, when we started, we were really focused on interviews, right? Like focus on just interviewing people. And I know I've even said in the beginning that like I didn't like, not to downplay my own voice, but that I just didn't want the podcast to really be about me. And I still feel similarly, right? Like I'm not I'm not trying to do this podcast so that I become like a famous influencer podcaster. You know, if that just happens by the byproduct, cool, whatever. But it's not like the goal to be like, you know, number one on like Spotify or Apple or whatever. Because number one on Spotify right now is Meghan Markle. So I'm just gonna give her credit there because I love her. But yeah, I feel as if like there was this focus on interviews. And then as we, I think, just got more comfortable with sharing our thoughts. I don't know if that was how it is for you, Zara, but for me, I felt like as I just got more comfortable sharing my thoughts, I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Like, I'm going to actually share my thoughts. And it doesn't have to be only through like the questions I ask folks or the interviews. It could be, you know, the post-interview section that we added last season. And then it can be, you know, my takes on pop culture, which I've been doing with you, which is really fun. Because I know in the beginning for me, I remember being really nervous, especially in season 1. I was so nervous, like, you know, we have our agreement to like record and edit and then like upload the podcast and we would schedule it. And you know, it's like my role behind the scenes to like schedule it. And I would get nervous and think like, oh my gosh, do I really want this episode to come out because I share this particular sentiment or thought? And I would just be so scared that, I don't know, that the world would like really know what I think. But now I don't feel that way anymore. Now I'm like, yeah, I'm going to schedule and publish that and it's going to be great. And I'm always glad that I do.
I definitely agree with that. I did have a bit of that as well. I will say my one saving grace is that I have zero problem sounding stupid because I do every day. And I don't mean that in like a way to put myself down by any means, just like to like not every thought that comes out of everyone's mouth is going to be smart. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's fine to say dumb things. You don't know. And then you can know, you can't know until you know. So, and you know, like I don't think about things before I say them, which is what you can hear in that last sentiment. So it like really doesn't matter to me in that regard. When like, I have ADHD. So as soon as it's out of my brain, it's like, oh, that was the thing I did. That was the thing I said. Just kidding. Not always, but sometimes. Yeah. But I do think as because I agree, I was really excited to have guests on, and like obviously I'm still excited to have guests on, but there is more space, I think, for us to share a bit of who we are and what we believe. And that's, I think, what is a common thread through podcasts that, you know, like when you find a podcast you like, it's like because you know the people and you get to have a relationship with them. And so, yeah, we're excited to have a weird parasocial relationship with all of you in some way.
Here's the thing. We don't have to have a parasocial relationship, though. We can actually get to know each other through our events. Look at me. I'm like plugging our stuff today. I'm usually not as like on point with this, but you know, we do have our like monthly meditation and show events as well as our co-working space. So, you know, sign up on our Substack to find out about that. But yeah, Zara, I feel like another thing I wanted to say is like, you know, I think we've always started this podcast with the intention of talking about wellness and its many like broad forms. And I think that one of the exciting things about just being more comfortable with sharing our thoughts as well as like continuing to interview our guests is that we're kind of wanting and kind of planning to talk to maybe the type of guest that you wouldn't consider as part of wellness, right? Like the type of people who you wouldn't think like, because, you know, in wellness, like a lot of our interviews so far, I feel like has been like yoga teachers or like therapists.
Yeah. Birth workers. Yeah. Things you typically associate with wellness.
And so I feel like, of course, those people are probably going to be people we'll continue talking to. But there's other types of people who do other types of work to support wellness that we want to talk to as well. And I think it's really exciting because, you know, the vision for us has never been to, I don't know, maybe this is because we both have strong Sagittarius placements in our chart. So maybe, you know, in Sagittarius, like is about the big picture, but I like that we have never, I feel like, gotten like too specific in like what we can talk about. You know, like we can only talk to yoga teachers, or we can only talk to therapists, or we can only talk about like pop culture and celebrities. It's never been like an only one thing. And I'm just glad that that's not the case.
I think that one speaks to the fact that both of us have an interdisciplinary background where it is taking different ideas and seeing how these can connect and how these solve and ask bigger questions, you know, and solve bigger problems that are beyond one context. Because it's like, oh, what do we do about celebrities getting married on plantations? It's like, well, they don't. That's the solution. But like, what does that mean in our society? You know what I mean? That's an interdisciplinary question. Sociology, philosophy, I mean, economics, if we want to get into it, you know, but like there's a bunch of different lenses to look through. And I also think it contributes to what we believe wellness is, which is something that is for everyone. It is making things accessible to people. It is making sure, like, it is, I'm never good with the national suicide awareness and prevention. I don't want to call them holidays. That sounds really insensitive because I don't mean it as a holiday, but like the prevention week or whatever, like awareness week. And like, it's so important to know that all of these different aspects impact wellness. It's not like just go to therapy. I've said it to so many people, and mostly I try to say it to people who have the financial resources to go, but just refuse to go. But like there are financial barriers. A lot of therapists are burnt out. They aren't taking on people. It's an accessibility issue. Wellness is so much more beyond than just therapy or yoga or birth work. It's all of the systems that make up our lives. And I think that's something we believed coming into this podcast, but something we've really started to embody in the way we speak about wellness and expand upon in the people we host on this podcast.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the only other thing that I haven't mentioned that I also want to say is also like there is like a political element to it. And because I'm thinking about like in season 2, you know, we had somehow the foresight to have 2 like midwives on in the era of like, you know, hearing that Roe was being threatened. Towards the beginning of the podcast, it was like the conversation was there. And then towards the end, it was like, bye, Roe, you know, no more Roe. And like so many people's lives are just so much harder now because of that. And it was just interesting because I feel like we really shared our like more political opinions, which again, like I mentioned, like season 1, I was like really scared and nervous about, you know, sharing anything like that could be seen as slightly political. Season 2, I was just like, fuck it, I'm going to tell you this how I really feel. And season 3, like I'm even more excited about it. I was like, you know, it's just kind of interesting to see like the trajectory of like my comfort level. And just like, I always enjoy your bluntness, Zahra, when you share what you really think about these things, because I feel like something that I think about a lot is how like, even in like, and I'm specifically talking about like wellness and like yoga circles, even the more progressive, social justice oriented minded people, I don't feel like they always name like their political views as political, you know, like they'll say it's about rights or humanity, which it is, which is always what we're about here at Thoughtful Wellness. But to say like, yes, this is my political stance. This is what I think about the politics today. Like even that doesn't happen very much, which is interesting because, you know, politics like rule our lives.
I think that's so interesting that you say that, because it really does strike to me of something that my mom and dad always tried to instill in me that I have thought every single day of my life since I understood what politics was, which is you're not supposed to talk religion or politics. And I have never felt that way because that makes up every goddamn aspect of your life. Like, what do you mean you don't care about politics? They're deciding how much your electricity costs. They're deciding how much money a big company can give to any political candidate. They're deciding so many aspects of your life. Like, shut the fuck up. You don't care about politics or you don't want to be political. Like, too goddamn bad. This is when we live. That is like, it is fundamentally part of what it means to be a democratic citizen, to be engaged with politics. And as much as that's so annoying because like it's so boring sometimes, that I want it to be boring so that you don't care, so they can do whatever they want. And that's just what it is. You have to care about politics, and I don't want to hear about how it's love and light, because it's not love and light if they're taking rights away from people.
You know, Zahra, I'm so glad. Like, thank you for just sharing what you shared, because like, oh, my mind is just firing. Like, there's so much I can respond to that. But something that I remember. So first of all, I just want to say, like, I agree with you on like, it never really made sense to me, this idea of like, don't talk about religion and politics, which I feel like, you know, maybe at a certain time, I don't know, 20 years ago-ish, maybe that made sense. But at some point, I don't think it makes sense to tell people that anymore, because like, it's untrue that those things like don't matter. Because I would argue that whether or not you're aware of it or not, you are being political and religious. You might not explicitly state it, but it's kind of like your status quo, right? And like, you know, if you're already listening to this podcast, you probably don't believe in just love and light it away. Thank goodness. If you are, I'm sorry, maybe you'll learn something, you know, stick around, you might learn something. But I just think like, if we think about it just like, oh, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, and just go with like the status quo of like just not explicitly stating it, like, where does that get you? Where does the status quo get you? I feel like right now it's getting us towards like Christian fascism, right-wing weirdness, right? Because that's just kind of where the status quo of neoliberalism is just kind of like enabling that. And then another thing, what I wanted to say earlier, which I'm now remembering again, is that I had a professor who would say like, you know, he does think that people should talk about politics and religion because it's talking about how you live and how you die. And like that, I mean, that's life right there, you know? And so it's like, it's about like being able to have those conversations that could make people uncomfortable, or that might require you to be more informed, right? That it is important, because why wouldn't we want to talk about how we live and how we die? Because that's like the human experience, right? Like life, death, rebirth, or, you know, whatever else your version of rebirth might be. And so I just think it's really interesting. And I feel like I've always agreed with the sentiment, but I think as of the last year, something I'm very proud about of myself is that I've been less scared to say like, this is what I think.
I love that. And I am glad that you are not scared to tell people what you think, because you have a lot of great and wonderful things to say and good perspective. So I love that. And also, honestly, fuck what anybody has to say. I just like, I'm almost 32 now. At this point in my life, I am done giving an absolute flying fuck what anyone has to say about what I think. It's especially about politics. Like, no, we only get one life when we have to be a part of it. And that unfortunately includes politics. And maybe we'll move beyond that one day, but you don't get, what is it? If you don't grow through it, if you go through it, or whatever that phrase is. You have to go through it to grow through it. And I just want to add also that what you were saying before was like sticking with the neutrality of it all reminds me so much of that Archbishop Desmond Tutu quote that says like, if you're neutral in the face of injustice, you side with the oppressor. And that is this weird version of like Christian fundamental fascism, eco-fascism that is going to start rising in this new age culture that we are seeing already. eugenics, white supremacy, all tied up into one. So we can't be neutral. Talk about
Yeah.
politics with your friends, my friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you were saying those words, I was like, oh, yes, I feel it. I see it. It needs to be named. And, it's like one of those things where it's like, you have to be able to like look at it to deal with it, right? Like it almost feels as if like there's like a big wound, but no one wants to actually look at it to clean it up, to heal it. It's kind of like just letting it fester and get infected and get worse. Like that's kind of how it feels. And it's such a wild thing that needs to even be said, because sometimes I feel a little bit like, why do we have to keep talking about these things? Like, shouldn't we already know? Like, it's already 2022 kind of thing. And then I remember that, like, yeah, we still need to like raise people's like critical mass, I think, as bell hooks might put it, like consciousness raising.
Yes, yeah, we do. We have to, well, and I think that's a thing that people don't realize needs to be happening on a lot of different levels, is like this critical mass that we need to reach. It needs to be reached on an intellectual level. It needs to be reached on a sociological level, like amongst all of us. And it also needs to be raised on like an emotional and spiritual level. Like people need to be aware that like we are all interconnected here. We all are together, but we're also all on these own journeys and they're not so separate. And that involves having to be kind to each other and care about each other and try to understand the world. I don't know. I think it's happening. I think it's slower than we want it to happen, but I am forever impatient, as some of us know. I'm just over here working on my Enneagram 2 holy will surrender. Any twos out there, if you don't know, there's a will greater than your own, and any plan you have to push upon the world. That's why we also have to listen and we have to wait and be patient and all those horrible fun things.
Can you remind me what the fours thing is?
Off the top of my head, no, but I'm gonna Google it right now because I'm curious.
Because I'm so curious, because as you're mentioning that you're working on that, I'm like, there's something about the fours that I'm also working on once I know for sure what it is.
I believe it's called the Holy Origin. Yeah, the Holy Origin. The idea that we're all connected to source, a true sense of being that goes beyond how we see ourselves as people. We are not isolated individuals and no man is an island. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We all come from the same place and are part of a bigger creative flow. This holy origin means that by definition, you are perfect, original, and connected to everything. You do not need to make yourself special or seek connections with others. You belong and you are whole and perfect, missing nothing in your connection to the source on all levels of being and meaning. It is only fear that separates you. And that is from the Integrative 9 website.
Oh gosh, yeah, I have to work on that, because as you were reading, Zahra, I'm like, yeah, I agree with that intellectually, but let me tell you, like, embodiment wise, I'm like, I can feel myself like resisting / a little bit like activated because I'm like, oh shit, I have things to work on. But thank you so much for sharing that. And if you're a 4, I'm with you. I'm working on it.
Yeah. We're all working. Like, that's the thing. Nobody comes to the end of the Enneagram where you're like, okay, that's it. I know it all. I'm all healed and all worked on. It's a different layer. It's like an onion. And hearing different parts of it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like a gut punch right now, but it is like worth it. You know what I mean? Because there is nothing more fulfilling than like deep spiritual work that you can embody in the rest of your life. Because what the fuck else are we doing here? This is a wellness podcast. Remember that, everyone.
No, I love that. No, I love that we're ending on that note, right? Because part of why we do what we do is exactly what you said, right? Like there is a again, with people saying don't talk about religion and politics, well, there's a spirituality to everything. Easy to forget because we're on the material plane and we have our like physical bodies, right? But for sure, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, is there anything else you want to share?
I think that's all. I am just really excited for season 3, for what we have already that I know is amazing and what we have to come, which is also going to be so amazing. Yeah. And
Yeah.
happy 1-year anniversary to us.
Yes, happy 1-year anniversary to us. Thank you so much to our listeners for supporting us. And please make sure to check out our Substack. And we would love to see you at our events. Bye for now.